Good morning, everyone. Happy Monday morning to you, and welcome back to Morning Musings. My name is Don K. Preston. I'm the president of Preterist Research Institute of Ardmore, Oklahoma. I hope you had an absolutely fantastic weekend. Pardon me. It was really, really enjoyable for me. Got to work on one of my old cars, and then my best friend and I, we we swapped a complete rear end, not just a chunk, but a complete rear end into a 1956 Chevy pickup that we own, and had a lot of fun doing that. Got scrapes and bruises. As a matter of fact, but here we are just working diligently, trying to get everything done, and it was quite a job, I have to admit. Fairly dangerous. We didn't have a tractor to lift the thing up or anything like that. So we had to use jacks and jack stands on soft soil. So it was pretty dangerous, but nonetheless, we're just working diligently along. And all of a sudden, my buddy goes, "Don, what's wrong with your arm?" I said, "What do you mean, what's wrong with it?" He said, "Look at it." And I looked down, and there's just blood pouring down my arm. Well, I go, "Well, I don't know." He goes, "What do you mean you don't know? You just, you cut yourself and you're bleeding like crazy." And this happens all the time. And my wife, I'll very often come in from working on one of my old cars, and I'll start washing my hands and my arms, and I'll be bleeding. And my wife will see this, and she said, "What'd you do?" And I said, "I don't know." And she's, "How can you do that? How can you be working on a car and you cut yourself and you don't even know it?" And I said, "Well, if it's not somewhat serious, yeah, I notice once in a while I get bumped, or hit something that seems to be sharp. But I said, unless it just really hurts, I don't pay that much attention to it until I see blood pouring down everywhere." But I don't even always notice that. But it has to be something, that gets my attention. It's kind of like, you can't see this. Well, you sort of kind of maybe a little bit. But I tried to take the top off that knuckle recently, working on an old car. And it was like, oh, holy cow, that hurts. Wow, that really hurt. And blood is just going absolutely everywhere. So, I do notice things like that once in a while. But I'm having so much fun. I'm enjoying myself so much that unless it really feels bad, I just don't pay that much attention to it. It's not that I'm all that tough of a guy. I do have a pretty high pain tolerance, but nonetheless, all that aside, including the loss of blood, had a really good weekend. Hope you did too. And again, thank you so much for joining us here on Morning Musings as we continue to discuss the feast days of Israel. Now, we've been involved in a study of Yom Kippur. We still are. We're going to be closing that down, concluding that study of Yom Kippur. But we've been focused on the question of when was the Day of Atonement consummated? When was it finished? And, large numbers of people have said, well, the atonement was finished at the cross. Well, if that's true, why was there a separate day for the Day of Atonement versus the Passover? And make no mistake, folks, Passover was the cross. Primarily, fundamentally, the cross was Passover. Now, listen very carefully, okay? I'm not denying that there was an atonement aspect. Even the ancient Jews saw an element of atonement in Passover. Now, mind you, that's never emphasized in Genesis 12 through 14. You do not find the doctrine of atonement linked with the Passover in Exodus. So while the ancient Jews linked, sorry about this. So while the ancient Jews linked some element of atonement to Passover, they well understood that the atonement was on Yom Kippur, a separate and distinct day, 4 months after Passover. So if you're going to argue that the Passover was the totality of atonement as well, then you've got to be able to explain why Passover was one feast day, Yom Kippur was another feast day 4 months after Passover. It just makes no chronological sense. Okay, there are lots of reasons why atonement was not finished at the cross. One of those reasons is because no man could enter into the most holy place until there was forgiveness of sin. There was no forgiveness of sin under the Old Covenant law. Hebrews chapter 9, 6-10. So as long as the Old Covenant law and the Old Covenant cultus stood valid, legally binding, imposed, there was no forgiveness of sin. And since there was no forgiveness of sin, there was no entrance into the most holy place indicating, symbolizing heaven itself. Now I know that because Christ entered pardon me, the most holy place, not made with hands, Hebrews 9:24. But according to Hebrews chapter 6, verse 19, he entered into heaven itself, that which is within the veil, the most holy place. So there's no question at all but what the most holy place is referred to, and it even symbolized heaven itself. So once again, for man, under the law, there was no entrance into the most holy place. So people have been pointing out, but Don, Hebrews chapter 10 tells us, therefore having boldness to enter into that which is within the veil. See, here they are, before AD 70, before the coming of the Lord, before the judgment, before the resurrection, they're being told to have boldness to enter into the most holy place. Well, folks, this is prolepsis. It is speaking of things as if they are current realities, when in fact they have not yet become a reality. It is speaking of things as if they are current realities because the surety of their occurrence is positively guaranteed. And I pointed out to you, throughout the New Testament, we are told that the first century saints had the earnest of the Spirit, that's the charismatic gifts of the Spirit, to guarantee the reception of the redemption of the purchased possession. Ephesians chapter 1, 12 and 13. Now, if they had the earnest of the Spirit as the guarantee of the coming redemption, well, what's redemption? Well, according to Ephesians chapter 1 verse 7, in whom we have, that's a present tense, redemption. So it sounds like redemption was a done deal, doesn't it? Wait a minute. In whom we have redemption, even the forgiveness of our sin. So redemption equals forgiveness. But Ephesians 1, 12 and 13 says they had received the Spirit as the guarantee of the redemption of the purchased possession. In other words, until redemption arrived. And I know that because Ephesians chapter 4 and verse 30 says they were sealed with that Holy Spirit of promise until the day of redemption. It couldn't get any clearer than this, ladies and gentlemen. Not really. Okay, so I've got to move along here. So there are a variety of different reasons why redemption was not realized, fully applied until the coming of the Lord. Now, I've shared with you a couple of videos now on the book of Revelation and the Atonement. And here's how I've developed that so far. Let me encourage you to go back to the two previous videos and look at Revelation and the Atonement. And very quickly, let me summarize what I've tried to share with you in those two videos. Point number one, the book of Revelation says, Revelation 11, Revelation 15, John says, I saw the ark of the testimony in heaven. Well, that means that the veil was removed. Well, this is fantastic. Man could enter into the most holy place, right? No. It means that entrance into the most holy place, entrance into the temple, and he uses the Greek word naos, which is the most holy place. You have hieron, which is the temple broadly considered. Naos is the most holy place. But John says, I saw the ark of the testimony. I saw the temple opened, and I saw the ark of the testimony. But in Revelation 15, verse 9, no man could enter into the most holy place until the wrath of God was finished. The wrath of God, Revelation 16, was contained in 7 bowls of God's wrath. Those 7 bowls of God's wrath would be consummated, would be finally poured out in the pouring out of the 7th bowl in the judgment of Babylon. Revelation 16, verse 19. Okay? So no man could enter the most holy place, which is heaven, until the wrath of God was finished, finalized. The wrath of God would not be completed until the judgment of Babylon. Babylon was the old covenant city where the Lord was crucified. Now, folks, you can just put a nail in the wall on that. Babylon was the great city where the Lord was crucified. Let me reiterate that. No man could enter into the most holy place until the wrath of God was completed. The wrath of God would be completed in the pouring out of the wrath of God from the 7th bowl. The pouring out of the 7th bowl would be in the judgment of Babylon, the city where the Lord was crucified. Therefore, the wrath of God and the time of man's entrance into the most holy place would be when Babylon, i.e. Old Covenant Jerusalem, the city where the Lord was crucified, was destroyed. Now, I think that's simple enough. So you know what? I think I'll leave it there until tomorrow. And tomorrow, on the flip side, what I will do for you is to demonstrate that Revelation continues that motif. No entrance into the most holy place. That is, no entrance into heaven until the wrath of God was poured out, completed. No entrance into the most holy place until the day of salvation. But the day of salvation would be the day of Christ's second coming, his coming out of the most holy place to bring salvation, to consummate the atonement. So, I'm going to leave it at this right here and remind you once again of my 2-book special. Take advantage of it, save yourself $20, okay? And you'll be glad you did. In the meantime, I'll see you on the flip side.